Thank you very much. Good morning. Welcome everybody to our session. Thanks for joining us. Before we get too deep into it, I wanted to define what is hyperautomation a little better. Now, I know a lot of us would be familiar with robotic process automation, or RPA, which is used to automate swivel chair data entry type of tasks. Hyperautomation takes that a couple of steps higher and uses other complementary techniques and technologies to help us look at more of end-to-end processes and get more value from automation. For example, when we look at the enterprise side of the business, some of the processes can get very, very complex. For example, in order to activate process can run for many days or weeks, and it can have as many as 10 to 12 handoffs across team members, making it very difficult to track where an order is or to track how to automate it. So when we use technologies such as process mining in conjunction with our automation platforms, and then bring in flavors of AI and machine learning for things like computer vision and analytics to help us understand how to improve the automation, then you really have a hyperautomation factory going, where you're able to progressively increase the breadth of automation and increase the stability of automation. With that, David, I know you've had a lot of success at AT&T scaling your hyperautomation practice. Would you mind taking us through some of your success factors and maybe an example or two?
Sure. So it's been a wonderful relationship working with Prodapt over the past few years, starting off with the bot team and evolving into a hyperautomation team. Today, we have over 70 different processes, and we will cross 40 million transactions, completed automated transactions this year. And it's our third year in this space. And so we're very proud of a lot of the accomplishments and successes we've had. A lot of the things that we do involve exactly what you just spoke to, where we spend time really mining out the process and looking for data and issues where we can go automate and find opportunity. And so today in the organization that I sit in, we have a huge back office. And so we feel like we're so close to the problem. Nothing is in between us and the solution. And so therefore, that gives us a chance to imagine and reimagine what a process should look like. And so as we sit with those teams, we really try to understand the root problem and what it is folks are trying to accomplish. We take that, we go back, and we have a ton of tools that you just spoke to. But what we really try to do is figure out what that process should look like or what it could look like. And what we found is with the various tools, whether robotics process automation, machine learning, data mining, process mapping, all of those tools combined, we have yet to run into a situation where we can't move that issue forward, where we can't solve for that and bring a more frictionless experience for our employees and a more effortless experience for our customers. Happy to talk a little bit more about, I'm sorry.
Just to make it real for our audience, why don't we walk through maybe an example?
Sure. So one of the examples I could share with you guys is we were looking in our organization, we have a huge back office. One of the functions we handle is processing credits. So if there's a billing issue for a business or a customer and they need it resolved, sometimes it takes many, many steps to resolve it. And if you're talking about enterprises, those could be, tens of thousands of entries that have to be processed. And to your point, it can take days, weeks, and months to do that by hand. Right. What we've figured out is we found some trends by looking at the data, mining out some opportunities. We found some trends where we saw data overage being a trend in a certain flavor. We were able to go do some data mining. It was really difficult getting to the actual root data, but we were able to do some data mining to get to that unbilled usage, share that with the sales team on a regular basis so that they can reach out to the customer, be the hero, and help that customer resolve that billing issue before it shows up on their bill and become something that could effectively crush that small business, because we want to help our customers be successful.
Now, a lot of times in use cases like this, it's how quickly we can get the solution to production that can be a problem, right? I know in this case, it was fairly rapid. Can you talk us through how we set it up at AT&T so that we have such rapid releases?
Sure. I would tell you, data mining, process mapping, it's not easy, but it can be done. And we have some very talented folks that helped us out with that. But the way we were able to move fast is a few things. One, we have some very structured processes and rigor around our development cycles, our sustainment cycles, and programs. And so that helps us to quickly know exactly what we need to go solve for. So a lot of times, things that we normally would write down, we're capturing that with video, moving extremely fast. So instead of the time it takes to document, we'll capture it with video. A picture's 1,000 words, right? From there, leveraging Prodapt developers, the partnership that we have some extremely talented bot developers, robotics processing developers, some really talented data mining engineers. And so they were able to see what we were trying to get to and help to develop that solution. As they did that, we were able to combine and condense that timeline into just 2 weeks, where normally if we went through regular technical development, it might have taken 2 or 3 months and a lot more funding. It was a really inexpensive and quick solution.
Right. No, that's great, David. And I think the other aspect that I see a lot of operators struggle with is to identify some of these high value use cases, right? I mean, in this example here, you have this automation that is generating millions of dollars in credit reduction, and that's a huge win. But how do we find out, what exactly should we target for automation? I know you have a very nice structured process that's set up. Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, well, everything we do, it starts with data.
Right.
And so we do a lot of analysis. We're always looking for the biggest elephant in the room, the biggest opportunity that we can find. And the other thing, our secret sauce is my automation team is comprised of former reporting managers and call center managers. And we trained them on robotics processing, but going down that path, you go a little slow. And so we partner with Prodapt, which was able to accelerate our program. They knew the Prodapt developers knew the software, they knew how to code. My managers, they knew the process. We put that together and you have 1 and 1 makes 11, right? The true power of and. And it's been a wonderful arrangement. It's been a great partnership. It's been very successful. Again, we start with data. We have folks that really know these processes, have very talented developers. There's really nothing in between us and the solution. We're so close to the problem.
Thank you, David. Now, I know it wasn't very easy, right, to get to the stage of having a center of excellence that can really churn this out, in matters of weeks. So can you take us through some of your learnings or, advice to other operators that may be looking to set up something similar?
Sure. I would tell you there's a few things. So one is you're going to have a traditional robotics processing or HyperAutomation is a change to traditional tech development. And so along with that change, some folks will get through that change a little faster than others. And what I found is you have to be able to help folks understand the WIFM, what's in it for them, and how can it help what they're trying to accomplish. So that's been very key in how we approach every opportunity, right? Because some folks may look at it as, oh, well, this is changing something that I was doing before. I don't know if I want that change or not. So really helping folks to understand the why and what's in it for them, how they can be successful as well. Once folks start to see that kind of piece of it, it really helps to gain sponsorship because together, 2 different groups can go to our leaders and say, this is something we would like, and it's a little different. And it's 2 sides of the field saying that we want this. And so therefore, that brings a lot of credence to what we're asking for. That partnership, that collaboration, that very early conversation of, why and what is it that we're trying to accomplish? Doing that in the beginning pays dividends.
Right. I know one other thing which I think may be useful for our audience is a lot of times you always have the question come up of, where do we assign the priority, right? I mean, because traditional tech development, to what you mentioned earlier, David, can take longer. I mean, oftentimes it's strategic, but how do you balance out the priorities? How do you decide which path you take?
Sure. Well, in a post-COVID environment, I think every business would say that they're capital constrained, right?
Right.
And so with that in mind, you're still needing to advance. You're still needing to create new digital technologies, remove friction from your process. And so what we found is by leveraging partners like Prodapt, we can use expense dollars where normally, traditionally, we had to use capital dollars. And it's been a wonderful experience because even as we look at the capital dollars versus expense dollars, often it's fewer expense dollars needed than capital dollars. And so that's a win-win. And the fact that you're able to develop this automation in a at a hyper speed, that's the trifecta. You get a lower cost, you get the type of dollars you have access to, and you get really fast automation.
So in other words, essentially what you're saying is we're able to fund it out of savings within the year and just use the same expense dollars to pay for it. Did I get that right?
Yeah. Exactly. We can use dollars that may have been allocated for expense and find ways to drive efficiencies, use those dollars early in the year, drive those efficiencies, and mine out that goodness by end of year. And so we're made whole.
Perfect. Thank you, David. Now, one last thing before we move on. Right now, a lot of times we see the early iterations of automation may not yield as much benefit as we would expect, and there may always be some surprises coming up. But you have a methodical process to have continuous agile sprints that keep working on the automation, right? So could you tell us a little bit more about why that's important and how we set up that continuity?
Sure. There's probably two things to that. One is sustainment, and the other is you have to give a hyper automation or a bot program a little time to grow. Think of 5G. It's the latest, greatest thing. Everyone wants it, right? We want it for a few different reasons. We don't know exactly how we're going to use it in all of its use cases, but we know we have to get there. And many companies around the world are racing to get there first, right? And so robotics processing is very similar. In its infancy, it may not show the huge benefit that you're looking for, but if you give it just a little bit of time, it will. And so as I think about our own program, our first year, we put up 2 million, we completed 2 million transactions. Last year, we automated 8 million. This year, we'll cross 40 million, right? We're really starting to hit a stride now. And so our leadership gave us the time for us to grow. That was one. The other that's extremely important, and I would say it is the litmus test of any successful robotics processing or hyper automation program, is sustainment. Without sustainment, it is unable to have a success. You're unable to have a successful bot program. It's not how many balls you can throw up in the air, it's how many you can juggle. And so being able to keep 70 processes and over 400 HVDs and so forth running simultaneously, that is the secret sauce of having a really significant bot program that can drive meaningful value to an organization.
Perfect. That was very useful. Thanks. Thanks very much, David. Before we close out, I know we spoke a little bit about service delivery type of processes in the beginning. We saw an example of using hyperautomation for service credits and preventing credits. We wanted to also look at it as, okay, remember we said hyperautomation looks at processes end to end. So, if we look at customer care, what do we see? If we look at customer care, I'm going to take you from the left. One of the first objectives of customer care is to try to prevent calls, right? To try to prevent the customer having an issue in the first place. And I know every operator has all of the network monitoring platforms, etc., in place, but oftentimes we still struggle to address the issue before the customer sees it. So our objective here is, before we receive that call from the customer saying, hey, I have a problem, we want to identify and hopefully resolve the issue. So what we've built is what we're calling a proactive assurance team, which uses machine learning models that's going to pull data from your existing network monitoring platforms and your CPEs, and then build those models that can predict issues in advance, so that we can say, listen, these specific customers or group of customers are going to face service degradation, and also kind of give a prediction of how that issue can potentially be resolved. Now, leaving that aside, even when the customer comes in and says, I have an issue or I have a query, there's a big drive across all operators to drive more customers to self-serve, right? And not have them wait on an IVR. Right? None of us like to wait on an IVR. So one of the key uses of hyperautomation is to leverage underlying technologies such as RPA to support this ability of self-service via whatever channel you choose, right? I mean, a lot of times our underlying platforms are legacy or mainframes, which may not support integration with some of these more modern digital channels. And that's potentially an area where hyperautomation can be hugely beneficial. The other area is, even when the call comes into the contact center, we can support the agent with customer 360 analytics and kind of a guided next best action scenario, so that the agent is much more productive, much more responsive to the customer, and improves your customer experience as well. All of this is supported by some of these technologies that we've been talking about, analytics, process mining to understand the typical flows, even platforms that leverage newer things like AR and VR, so that you're able to start using your customer's smartphone device to help you troubleshoot any potential problems. So what is the end result, right? I mean, when we apply something like hyperautomation to customer care, what is the end result? End result is, first of all, call reduction. We want to eliminate calls that come in, direct customers to self-service, or eliminate the problem altogether, and increase self-serve rates and increased no-touch resolution rates. All of these not only vastly improve your customer experience, they also help you with employee experience and with higher levels of automation efficiency. With that, David, I want to thank you very much for joining us for the session. Everybody, thanks a lot. Again, I hope you found this useful. I'm going to hand you back to the studio.